The journalist who broke the Clinton tarmac story is found dead by apparent suicide. in his home over the weekend. So we'll talk a bit about what happened there, what we know, what we don't know, and what we can surmise from going on through all this. In other news, in the Biden admin, Biden finishes off the G7, and there's plenty of stuff to talk about with that. So we've got a good stretch of articles. We'll talk a bit about what happened over on that side of the world while we were going on with that. Let's see, what else are we doing today? Trump has been caught collecting the records of Congresspeople as well, so we'll talk a bit about that. And we won't talk about, I promise, the fact that Adam Schiff was doing the same thing to Devin Nunes, because that wouldn't be important. No. And James Patterson and Bill Clinton are teaming up to write a book together. It's going to be all this and more. Hey. Do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So, it's been a weekend, that's for sure. Oh, and I mean, those of you who follow me on Instagram saw the point that I got absolutely pissed off this weekend, and I don't do that very often. I'm trying to be very mild-mannered. I try to be very calm at all times, but, it's just when you find somebody who did some abject poor work on a vehicle before you, you know that you don't want to do, especially on something so basic. So, on the 2014 F-150, where the oil filter sits, it sits right up over a crossmember, so once you take the thing off, it leaks oil all over the place, and then for probably about the next 10 miles, it looks like you have a little bit of an oil leak. It's a common problem on those vehicles. They all do it if they have the V8. Every single one of them does it. But I noticed on the last oil change, the guy that did it before, because I didn't do the last one, and I barely drive now, so I only got, this is only the second one I've ever done. I did this one here, but I noticed that the last oil change, the guy who worked on it said it seemed to be leaking more than normal, and he thought he did something wrong, and then I noticed the same thing when I just did it this past weekend. It seemed like it was leaking more than normal. So I reached up to see if I could just find a wet spot or something up underneath there, and I find a rag wedged up in between the crossmember and the front differential, and had to have been there for at least as long as I've owned the vehicle. Specifically seemingly put there to soak up the oil that drops off the filter, which, given the fact that it's sitting in there, means that if that thing would have cocked at least a little bit, and the tail end of that rag would have got up under the filter, that filter would have never sealed and would have cost me an engine. But it's all fixed, it's all ready to go. I drove across state with it now, and that's partially because I can't read an invitation, and I can't tell the difference between a 12th and a 19th, so that's another story for another time. But yeah, that was my weekend. Anyway, how was your weekend, you guys? How are you guys doing? We got a bunch of stuff to get to today, and I probably shouldn't have spent as much time on that anecdote as I did. But, it's what happens, and it's what makes us human. But we got to get into it here. So before we get started, head on over and check out my friends over at the Freedom Scoop Media Group, where we carry great shows such as The Generational Gap, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. And keep with us if you're over on Twitch, or even if you're not over on Twitch, but I can only send you over there myself over on Twitch. But we're going to go over and raid the Daily Ignoramus, and then a little bit later on, I'm going to be on the Daily Ignoramus too, so watch for that. We did that last minute, so there was no announcement on Friday or anything. He said that he was looking for more guests. I said, well, you can always call me, and we did a little bit of stuff behind the background, and it's lit, and we're doing it today. So no prep, no nothing. We're just going to get on and go. But Steven is one of my best friends in the world, so I'm happy to do it for him, and whatever he asks me, he'll ask me, and then we'll figure it out. So pay attention to that, and once we get the website back up and running, we will have other great ways that you can come on and help us support great creators. All right, let's look in at your finance here for the morning. Let's get the live chat up so I can see what you guys have going on over here. And make sure, by the way, that if you guys are just lurking, that you guys come on in over and chat in the live chat, because I do thank you at the end of the week. I don't do a lot of it on air unless there's something major, like I've got a microphone malfunction or something, but I do still like to take the time and thank the people who take the time to watch me and have their morning coffee with me. So if you just get one message in there, I know that you're there and I can thank you. So let's get into it. Starting with your Dow. Your Dow was up 0.04% as of Friday. Just a little bit. Just slightly. It made it. After spending most of the day down. So there's probably a few things to talk about coming back up from IBD and Market Watch over the weekend. So we'll talk a bit about that. This was, however, a good weekend for Bitcoin. As of last night, when I looked at it, your Bitcoin was at $38,789 US dollars and 90 US cents. So that was a good weekend because we were at the bottom edge of 36,000 before the weekend started. So it's starting to claw its way back up to where it was. And Elon looks like he got into it a little bit too. Musk says Tesla will use mining cleaner. Let's actually grab that one. Let's put that up on the stack. We'll do that at the end of the finance. Because, I mean, we don't have enough sitting up at the top already. But let's look at that one too, because I'm actually kind of curious about that. So let's see what's going on with that. On your gas, buddy, your fuel for the Madison area is up. $2.65 was the low price leader as we went, with a discount down to, I think it was $2.61 or $2.63. But yeah, what this here was your low price beforehand, and now that is your discounted price. So your low price is now at $2.69 at the Costco in Sun Prairie. Otherwise, we see some $2.69, some $2.73s. Looks like we're $2.69 pretty well straight across the board, though, which is nice. At least it's steady. You know, it's not just all over the place. You can pretty well go anywhere in Madison and get $2.69 gas, which I don't know why you would want to, because then you're paying tax to Dane County. And, well, as a Wisconsin resident who does not carry the progressive agenda, I can tell you why I don't care to pay the sales tax in Dane County. But that's another story for another time. Let's get into the finance for the day from IBD. Dow Jones Futures, Fed meeting, Apple versus Microsoft versus Google. How to be a big stock market winner. I can answer that without official financial advice. How to be a big stock winner. Don't invest right now. Wait a little bit. See what the economy is going to do, because everything's overheated and a big bubble. But hey, you know, what do I know? I'm just a guy who yells into a microphone on the internet and reads this every day. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones Futures edged lower Monday morning, while S&P 500 Futures edged higher and the NASDAQ rose slightly, with investors looking ahead to the week. This week's Fed meeting, the stock market rally continued to improve last week, with the S&P 500 at a record high and more breakouts continuing. While not a rip-roaring bull market like 2020, investors can take advantage of the current uptrend, but to achieve big market gains over time, you have to minimize losses. Meanwhile, Apple and Microsoft both have bases and proper buy points, but which of these tech titans is more promising, Apple stock or Microsoft? Meanwhile, Google parent Alphabet, Novocure, and Bio-Techne are just below buy points. Microsoft stock and Google are on the IBD leaderboard and long-term leaders. Google stock is also on the IBD 50. For the Fed, the Federal Reserve meets on Tuesday and Wednesday. Investors will look for any hints that policymakers are starting to talk about tapering bond purchases, but that may not happen until the July or September Fed meetings. If you buy a bond right now, this is not official financial advice, but if you buy a bond right now, you are out of your mind. Hold on to the ones that you have, let them sit and wait for a little while, but if you buy a bond right now, oof, I'm sorry. I would not go anywhere near one of those. But that may not happen until the July or September Fed meetings, or possibly the Jackson Hole Monetary Symposium in late August. Wait. Is the Monetary Symposium for our US dollar really called Jackhole? Wow. Okay. You can't parody some of this stuff. An actual scaling back of asset purchases likely won't take place for several months, with Fed rate hikes not until 2023 or earlier. Bond traders, after being spooked by rising prices earlier this year, have come around to the Fed argument that the recent spike in inflation is temporary. Temporary, huh? 4.2% and then 5%. Right in a row. You actually bought this bullshit? No, this is new normal. This is absolutely normal, and that right there is why I said and this is not official financial advice, but if you buy a bond right now, you are out of your gourd. I mean, given my feelings towards the government, I wouldn't buy a bond anyway, but I know some people actually make some sort of success with them, but no. Oh. The 10-year Treasury yield tumbled 10 basis points to 1.46 last week, hitting a fresh 3-month low. And yet inflation was still 5% in May. They're lying to you at this point. But, they'll continue to do so, and IBD will continue to print it. On the futures, Dow futures were slightly below fair value, S&P 500 futures edged higher, and NASDAQ 100 futures rose 0.3%. Bitcoin is trading above 39,000, near the high of its recent trading range. After tumbling from record highs in mid-April, the Bitcoin price jumped Sunday after Elon Musk and Tesla only sold about 10% of its Bitcoin. Presumably near the end of the first quarter, he said Tesla will resume allowing Bitcoin transactions when the cryptocurrency's green energy use improves. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, that's what we see coming up off of Investors Business Daily. Let's grab one from MarketWatch. Dow S&P 500 set for muted rise as stock market gears up for Fed meeting. From Mark DeCamber. Futures on the U.S. stock benchmarks on Monday were inching higher, with the S&P 500 on track to attempt a third straight record closing high, as investors ready for an important meeting of the Federal Reserve this week that could help investors assess how the central bank views evidence of surging inflation against data showing slack in the job market amid the recovery from the COVID pandemic. The Fed's two-day meeting commences on Tuesday. Futures for the Dow were 12 points or less than 0.1% higher at 34,368. S&P 500 futures were climbing 2.9 points or less than 0.1% at 42,3975. NASDAQ futures rose 34.5 points to reach 14,020.25 for a gain of 0.3%. So the NASDAQ is going to be the big winner, looking like on tech as far as the futures go. We will see what happens as the actual trading goes in. On Friday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average retreated 0.8% for the week, snapping a 2-week win streak, but off 0.86% from its May 7th record closing at 34,777.76. The S&P 500 advanced 0.4% for the week to mark its 28th record close of 2021. The NASDAQ Composite ended the week with 1.9% gain, off 0.5% from its April 26th record closing high at 14,138.78. What's driving the market? A lot of lies, a lot of people that have no idea what they're doing, and a lot of people that stand to lose a whole bunch of money. I had a voice crack there because apparently I'm back to being 13. What once proved illusory for the Fed years ago may now be transitory, and now it is time to talk about talking about inflation. It is time to talk about talking about inflation. That's actually what it says on the page. By the middle of the week, investors may have a clearer sense of the U.S. Central Bank's game plan for confronting inflation and normalizing policy if they deem pricing pressures temporary. Wednesday's statement from the Federal Reserve isn't expected to feature any fireworks, but it's an important meeting as it will offer clues about the reaction function of the central bank to rising inflation, wrote Neil Wilson, chief market analyst at Markets.com. We know the Fed is happy to let inflation run a little hot over the summer as it pins everything on its unemployment mandate, the analyst said. Presently, the U.S. Central Bank is buying $80 billion of treasuries and $40 billion of mortgage-backed securities each month, while keeping the benchmark interest rates between 0% and 0.25%. Fed Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and fellow policymakers are expected to discuss the eventual tapering, the size of the $120 billion a month asset purchase program, which could prove delicate as they hope to avoid roiling the market in the process. So basically what I'm gathering out of this is Jerome Powell says, we got to do something, but we don't know what to do. Because everything could go bad. Maybe, but, like I said, stocks and bonds I would stay out of if it was me. I would actually start looking into crypto if it was me, but this is not official financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And if you want official financial advice, you should call your financial advisor. All right, let's grab one from Yahoo News. Just looking at the Bitcoin quick. Bitcoin jumps after Musk says Tesla will use when mining is cleaner, from Joanna Ossinger and Jim Silver. Elon Musk said Tesla would allow transactions in Bitcoin once mining is done with more clean energy. The executive said in a tweet that he wants miners to use about 50% clean energy. The Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance has estimated that 39% of crypto mining is powered by renewable sources, mainly hydroelectric. It shows that Musk still sees a future for wider Bitcoin adoption after he criticized the digital currency for being an energy hog and relying too much on fossil fuels. Bitcoin jumped 9% on Sunday and traded at 39,580 for a near 2-week high as of 8 a.m. in London on Monday. Elon's stance seems to be moderating and providing a target that's not far away, said Jonathan Cheeseman, head of the over-the-counter and institutional sales at crypto derivatives exchange FTX. The rally was already underway as the market speculates about imminent purchase from MicroStrategy, and the G7 comments on crypto were neutral, even optimistic about digital innovation. MicroStrategies Incorporated, whose chief executive officer, Michael Saylor, has become a vocal Bitcoin evangelist, last week boosted a junk bond offering for the purposes of buying the crypto to $500 million from $400 million. So it looks like because Musk says he's going to accept it again, it's going to go back up again, which, I mean, does speak to the functionality of it. And I've talked a bit about the fact that I've got a bunch of Doge that's looking in a really, really good place right now. I've got a bunch of Doge, but I'm keeping it. I'm not going back out. I'm not selling it back. I don't want to pay the capital gains on it. But other than that, I mean, it's just sitting there. It's a savings account because it's Doge. And a lot of your other cryptocurrencies are the same way. They're just a savings account. But with Bitcoin and Tesla being out there, Bitcoin does seem like it's going to be one of those things where you can actually make a purchase. I've heard tell of Subways where you can go out there and pay in Bitcoin. It's like a tiny fraction of a Bitcoin, but you can pay in Bitcoin. Or you can go out and buy your Tesla in Bitcoin, but you can spend Bitcoin. It's a useful currency. Doge is not. It's a savings account. If I want to spend my Doge, I have to turn it back into US dollars and pay the capital gains tax, which I'm sure that you still have to pay the capital gains. If you turn around and buy something in Bitcoin, I'm sure that the government's going to fucking nail you on that too. But, I mean, I literally have to make my Doge back into a US dollar if I want to spend it. So that's not useful. And I'm sure that if people start accepting Doge, it'll actually go up in price again. And I will go, ah. But as far as it sits, it's a savings account. That's all it is. As far as the mining cleaner, though, some of this comes, and I didn't realize this about El Salvador either, but mining cleaner could happen in El Salvador because the majority of El Salvador, from what I understand, is powered by thermodynamic power. It's powered by a volcano. A volcano and the heat from the volcano spinning a turbine. And that's what's making their power. So, you can put some more turbines up around the volcano and start to set up your mining rigs. And then, hey, you've got Bitcoin mining going on in El Salvador. And that's green energy right there. They're doing your transactions. They're getting just a tiny fraction of Bitcoin for their trouble. And that's what you're getting. That's what you're doing. So I could start to see that happening. And we could see that 50% mark going back up where Elon will come out and say, hey, yes, no, I definitely will go back and start to accept the Bitcoin again. All right. Let's keep going. Let's get into the big news of the day. Starting with the fact that we got to start the show today with an F in the chat again because, and it's amazing that this didn't make big news. I thought this would make a lot bigger news than it did. But here we sit, one of 14 people hurt in Austin, Texas mass shooting dies from Alta Spells and Deanna Hackney. One of the 14 people who injured in a mass shooting in downtown Austin has died, police say. Douglas John Cantor died from his injuries around noon local time on Sunday, Austin police said in a release. Authorities have arrested one person in connection with the shooting early Saturday morning. Mayor Steve Adler's office said earlier officials released no information about the arrest. On Saturday, Austin Interim Police Chief Joseph Chacon told a press briefing that 2 of the injured were in critical condition. Chacon said authorities have identified 2 male suspects and added that it appeared that this was an isolated incident between the 2 parties. Almost all of those injured were innocent bystanders, the chief added. Austin police got their first 911 call shortly before 1:30 a.m., followed by several more calls of shots fired. Chacon said as shots rang out, officers on the block were able to immediately respond, he said. They were there within seconds, the chief said, and quickly identified several shooting victims that were in distress. They began immediate life-saving measures. He credits their speedy action in part for the lack of fatalities in the shooting. Chacon said investigators were reviewing video footage from multiple sources, including the city's system of video surveillance on cameras, to determine what happened. Officers have worn body-worn cameras. We have the public safety Halo camera system, which we have had for a number of years, which did capture parts of the incident. Chacon said, sorry, I got allergies today, so a little bit of runny nose. And of course, the local businesses themselves have security footage that we are reviewing for evidence. Adler, the mayor, commented on the shooting downtown in a series of tweets. The uptick in gun violence locally is part of a disturbing rise in gun violence across the country as we exit the pandemic, he said. APD and the City Council have initiated multiple violence prevention efforts in response, but this crisis requires a broader coordinated response from all levels of government. One thing is clear, greater access to firearms does not equal greater public safety. DeWitt Pert, President and CEO of the Downtown Austin Alliance, said in a statement, "We are saddened that Austin has joined the far too lengthy list of communities that have experienced mass shootings. This senseless violence must end. We must continue our work towards ensuring downtown is a safe, clean, and welcoming for all. But today we are thinking of those affected by the shooting. We need to come together, care for each other, and be strong together for Austin." And there it is. Another statement that's given by the dangers of opening back up and people coming back out. Uh-oh. My headphones are going to die. Let's throw a plug in there and see if that works. Hang on. That'll buy us a little bit of time. Thankfully, we've got the plug right over there that we can do this. All right. Anyway, yeah, you knew this was going to happen, especially in places that were reluctant to reopen as the economy reopens back up again. We're going to have mass shootings now because people were pent up and they've got access to firearms. And, what do we see? What have we talked about the entire time that this commie-coof pandemic has been going on is that gun sales go up and they set another record and 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 another record for almost a year straight. We've got just another record in gun sales. And now all of a sudden, hey, people are going back out. They're being back out there in the world. And, oh no, there was another mass shooting. I'm surprised that this didn't get more media attention. This one just kind of fell by the wayside almost immediately. Which tells me that this probably didn't fit some sort of narrative that they were trying to push. But in spite of the fact, F in the chat for the people who died in this. Absolutely. F in the chat. Let's grab another one here. Austin police arrest suspect in mass shooting on 6th Street, say another is still at large. From Nathan Bernier and Stephanie Frederico. A suspect in the early morning mass shooting on 6th Street is in custody, the Austin Police Department said in a news release. The second suspect remains at large, Austin Police Department says. At least 14 people were shot in a crowded street in a half an hour before bars closed. None of the victims died, but 2 were in critical condition. That is not true anymore. At an afternoon news conference, interim Austin Police Chief Joseph Chacon said police were looking for the 2 male suspects, but provided no additional information because of the ongoing investigation. "We are going to solve this case," he said. He said the shooting appears to have been an isolated incident between two parties. The suspects could face charges ranging from deadly conduct to attempted murder. Most of the victims were innocent bystanders, Chacon said. Fire and EMS initially had trouble accessing the area because of the large crowds, he said. Officers used trauma kits to apply chest seals and tourniquets. Chacon said he believes the officers' quick action was largely responsible for no one dying at the scene. He said 6 of the victims were transported to the hospital in police vehicles. EMS transported 4 others, and 4 people either drove themselves or got other rides. Austin police and FBI are reviewing reams of video footage captured by APD surveillance cameras, dozens of which are stationed around high-activity areas downtown. Detectives are also seeking private surveillance footage and any smartphone video recorded by witnesses. An earlier news conference, Chacon said 911 calls began pouring in around 1:30 a.m. As the minutes ticked past, 911 began receiving calls of more victims. Witnesses posted accounts on social media. One video shows people on the ground as others flee for cover. Greg Abbott issued a statement saying the Texas Department of Public Safety is working closely with the Austin Police to investigate. Cecilia and I ask our fellow Texans to join us in prayer for those who are injured, he said. Chacon said the shooting was emblematic of the increase in gun violence. According to the APD data, violent crimes that involved a gun rose 47% between 2019 and 2020. Democrat politicians and police representatives on Saturday staked out positions on the best path forward. We need adequate staffing for all departments in public safety, Austin Police Association member Bino Cadenas tweeted. Many of my friends worked this incident and said it was chaotic. Cadet training restarted Monday following a pause to allow the police department to make changes to how it trains new officers. Chacon said the pause has been tough on staffing. We are slowing down because there are fewer officers, he said. The renewed classes will start to turn the tide, but it is going to take time. Austin City Council member Kathy Tovo, whose district includes the area where the shooting occurred, said she supports having the cadet classes so we can continue so we can replenish our police force. But undoubtedly, we need to look at strategies for reducing gun violence in our community, she said. So, a lot of stuff going on there, and I mean, a lot of answers we don't have. One guy arrested, one guy died, 13 other people injured, another guy at large. But nobody seems to be running about this and running to go through this. I barely noticed that this existed. So, yeah, there's that too. So we will watch this. This will be a developing story. If something bigger comes out of this, we will definitely swing back to this. Let's grab this one here from KENS5. Alabama anchor who broke the Bill Clinton-Loretta Lynch tarmac story, dead at 45. From Doug Jones. Journalist and Alabama television news anchor Christopher Sine, who once played football for the University of Alabama, was found dead Saturday morning after what police are investigating as an apparent suicide. AL.com reported that the reporter and anchor for ABC 3340 in Birmingham was found after an emergency 911 call was received at 8:13 a.m. local time on Saturday regarding a person down at a residence. When police and fire arrived, the 45-year-old Sine was found dead, according to local media. Police said the death was being investigated as a suicide. Sine, who grew up near Dallas, Texas, was previously a reporter, morning anchor at the ABC affiliate in Phoenix, Arizona, when on June 26th he broke the news of a secret tarmac meeting between the former president and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch at Sky Harbor Airport. As Deadline reported, news of the meeting created suspicions that Clinton was lobbying Lynch on behalf of his wife. At that time, Hillary, who was a candidate for president of the United States, was also under investigation for allegedly using a private email server for official public communications. The practice carried the potential of revealing state secrets to foreign entities. The Department of Justice, along with State Department, later decided not to prosecute Hillary after investigating the matter. Sine played offensive lineman at Alabama in 1990. He later wrote a book about the Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch meeting called Secret on the Tarmac. Sinclair Broadcast Group Vice President and General Manager Eric S. Land said, "Our deepest sympathy is shared with Chris's loving family and close friends," Land said. "We have lost a revered colleague whose indelible imprint will serve forever as a hallmark of decency, honesty, and journalistic integrity. We can only hope to carry on Chris's legacy. May his memory be for blessing, as was reported by AI.com. ABC 3340 wrote on their website.
The same result.
I want to ask you about a comment that Vladimir Putin said today, but why do you think he hasn't changed his behavior in spite
Why
of
do I have
everything
something
the US has
autoplay?
done to this point?
And what is it?
He's Vladimir Putin.
Let's fix that. There it is. I found it. Sorry about that. Had autoplay going, and we didn't know where it was. All right. ABC 3340 wrote on their website that Sign returned to Alabama after 13 years as a journalist in Arizona writing. The decision put him in a place where he could see his boys off to school in the mornings, watch them play baseball in the evenings, and take them fishing on the weekends. Christopher Sign leaves behind his wife Laura and their 3 boys, along with their extended family, ABC 3340 said. A lot of stuff going on here. A lot of stuff. You notice this happens a lot to people around the Clintons? Jeffrey Epstein, of course. Who's that chef? That one chef that was around the Clintons too, that just mysteriously got all depressed and decided that he needed to end it all. Christopher Sign. There was the other guy that shot himself twice in the head, in the back of the head on top of it. But regardless, I suspect foul play on this. I absolutely do. There's a lot of suspicion going on here. I don't necessarily believe that this is all in the grassroots. And I mean, you could look at this and you could see where I'm coming from on it. It's not that hard to see. I think even KENS5 is kind of suspicious of this because they keep pointing out the fact that this is the dude that broke the Loretta Lynch story, which he absolutely is. So there's some stuff to think about. There's some stuff to talk about. I don't know. I don't. Is this Arkanside? Is this actual suicide? Is there something else going on there? Are we going to find a trove of documents somewhere? Is there something that he was looking into that needed to be shut up? What was going on with this guy's body of work before all this happened? I have questions. I have a lot. Anthony Bourdain, thank you. I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about this. But I have this feeling that none of them are going to be answered, and let's just sweep this aside as somebody who was antagonistic to the Clintons is suddenly out of the way again. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from Twitter, which I think is video. Yes. Joe Biden seems to get lost at G7 summit in England. Jill comes to his rescue. Let's have a look at what that looked like.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?
I beg your pardon?
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
Nice to meet you. They always do.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?
I beg your pardon?
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
Nice to meet you. They always do.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?
I beg your pardon?
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President? Yeah, that dude is, he's out to fucking lunch. But he has the nuclear code, so yeah, there's that. But how dare you? You must respect all of your presidents, no matter what their party, no matter what the... No. No, you don't have to. I didn't respect the last guy either. I thought he was a fucking chucklehead too. Alright, let's keep going. From Reuters, Exception to the rule, G7 deal on tax triggers carve-out talk. From Leigh Thomas. With the foundations for a global tax deal finally laid down by the G7, officials are limbering up for a clash over exemptions and other carve-outs for specific industries and special economic zones. See? Their donor buddies weren't going to be subjected to this, and you knew that coming in, didn't you? With China at the center. The group of 7 wealthy, industrialized states agreed on June 5th to support a minimum corporate tax rate of at least 15% and how to share rights to tax the biggest companies operating across borders in their country. But the official communique from the G7 finance ministers made no mention of whether exceptions and exemptions should be made in broader talks underway, leaving a critical question hanging. If you want to enforce minimum taxation, you could take the view that no carve-outs should be made because you should impose the minimum tax. But that's not realistic, University of Lausanne law professor Robert Danon said. Countries have had long used tax incentives to advance policy priorities ranging from boosting research and development to attracting foreign investment. Some are now reluctant to give up those tools, including China, which has for decades used special economic zones with low taxation to attract foreign investment, which has been central to its economic development. That and the fact that they come over and say, "You come over here, you don't have to deal with environmental law." One official briefed on talks said that Beijing had legitimate concerns about such zones, but China also offers attractive tax rates to its technology firms, some of which, like Alibaba and Tencent, are incorporated in the Cayman Islands, where there is no corporate tax. Another official told Reuters that China was against the 15% agreed by the G7, and winning carve-outs would be its condition for getting behind the rate. Oh, they're going to get behind something. It's probably going to be the rest of the world, but they're going to get behind something. Oh, Western world, you call me daddy. So far, the other G20 emerging market countries are rallying behind the G7, with the finance ministers of South Africa, Mexico, and Indonesia backing the deal in a Washington Post op-ed. I'm confident that at the end we will also reach a deal with China because, as always, in such international negotiations, it will be a give and take, one negotiator said. So far, Beijing has kept its cards close, with the foreign minister saying that the G20 finance ministers should accommodate the concerns of all sides. Boy, I wish Spectrum would fix the internet out here. At least we're not killing the processor when the internet drops. But still, boy, I wish they would fix the internet out here. Nearly 140 countries are due to agree at the June 30th to July 1st online meeting on the future rules for cross-border taxation before turning back the package over to the G20 for backing at a meeting on July 9th to July 10th. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which has been steering the talks at a technical level, said in a blueprint for the global minimum tax in October that a case could be made for excluding investment funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, government bodies, international organizations, and nonprofit organizations. While that went largely unchallenged, that is not the case for the OECD suggestion in the blueprint that international shipping could fall out of the scope of the minimum tax. All that means is your stuff is going to get more expensive. Many European Union countries tax shipping firms based on the carrying capacity of their ships to discourage them from registering ships in tax havens, which has helped push the sector's average effective tax rate to only 7%, according to calculations by the International Transport Forum at the OECD. Shipping nations are making a strong case for exclusion, but there are some countries that are opposed to any exclusion, says ITF shipping expert Olaf Merck. No, they should absolutely not be taxed. If they're shipping. If they're getting your cheap stuff from China over to you, then they shouldn't be, because otherwise they're just going from port to port. Who gets the taxes at that point? And how do you be competitive as to who gets the taxes? Meanwhile, countries also have to resolve whether there should be exclusions and parallel talks about how to divide the rights to tax excess profits of the world's 100 biggest, most profitable companies. Here's an idea. Don't. Britain is already angling to get an exclusion for its all-important financial sector in the technical discussions at the G7. Sources familiar with the negotiation said the OECD's blueprint for taxing excess profits, also from October, suggested that exemptions could be made for natural resources, financial services, construction, and residential property, international airlines, and shipping businesses. That seems like just an incentive to get more people into those industries, so you have more competition and possibly the prices go down, but taxation is theft to begin with, but why are we taxing like this? What is an excessive profit? That's my question for you. What is an excessive profit? If you worked hard and you put everything on the line, what's excessive? Tell me what's excessive for the amount of work that you put in. For the amount of nights that you had to wonder whether or not your wife or your kids were going to be fed. Before you got to the point where you're at now. What is excessive? Explain that to me. Explain it. Because I need to know. So that's what they're going to do. That's how they're going to do. And it looks like China might actually get away with not doing it again. Isn't that funny? All right. Let's grab one from Time. How Biden plans to get tough on Vladimir Putin in their Geneva summit. From Brian Bennett. Vladimir Putin spent much of the 2020 orchestrating a brazen influence campaign to stop Joe Biden from becoming the... Oh my God, they're going to start with a lie. Oh my God, they are going to start with a lie. Vladimir Putin spent much of the 2020 orchestrating a brazen influence campaign to stop Joe Biden from becoming the 46th president of the U.S. Failing at that, the Russian autocrat spent the first 5 months of the Biden's term presiding over a series of attacks by criminal organizations and state-led agencies against America's gas and food supplies at home and its allies and values abroad. The unspoken question facing the U.S. president when he sits down with Putin on June 16th in a lakeside hotel in Geneva is this: what are you going to do about it? Taking a page from America's successful decades-long strategy against the Soviet Union, Biden is planning to rally allies at the G7 summit in the UK and at NATO confab in Belgium to present a united front against Moscow. Biden's 8-day foreign trip, his first as president, was originally planned as a sedate expedition to reconnect with old friends and discuss strategies for managing climate change and China's global rise. But the recent ransomware attack on Colonial Pipeline and JBS Foods meat processing plants, allegedly by criminal hackers acting with Moscow's tacit approval, changed the calculation, says a senior Biden administration official. These guys are running wild, and they think Biden can be taken advantage of. Come on, man! Biden can be taken advantage of. The U.S. government is doing it already, and the cabal of people in his administration are already doing so. Yes, he absolutely can be taken advantage of. They're doing it at a very, 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 very strong pace. But we can't let Russia do it. That's our job, is to take advantage of our houseplant fucking president. Honk, honk. Now Biden is preparing to get tough when he sits down with Geneva and Putin for the first time. Yeah, I'm sure that his administration aides are going to tell him that it's corn pop. It's not actually Putin, it's corn pop in disguise. Among the moves he and his team have weighed to show, he means business, reminding Putin that the U.S. has its own cyber abilities and can target Putin's personal overseas fortunes. Biden hopes to amplify both threats by speaking for U.S. allies as well, and to back Putin down from these provocations. The whole goal is to have Putin come away saying, "The Americans are onto us and have us encircled," the official said. This is propaganda. This is pure propaganda. This is Cold War era propaganda, start to fucking finish. Joe Biden is not going to get tough with Vladimir Putin. Furthermore, I still need to see the proof that all of this that they keep talking about, the Colonial Pipeline, the JBS attack, the presidency, the trying to prevent him from being the 46th president, I have yet to see any proof that was due to the Russians. And hell, we'll go back to 2016 for that matter, because I've yet to see any definitive proof that was the Russians too. And yes, Randy makes a good point. He's getting tough after he relaxed the sanctions and allows Russia to go back and have their beautiful Nord Stream 2 pipeline going into Europe. That's acting tough on Russia? You fucking dolts. None of this. None of this. This is a purely propagandistic piece of shit article. And I'm actually kind of sorry I wasted your time on it. This is Red Scare level bullshit. Hide under your desk in case the nuclear bombs fall, so you can kiss your ass goodbye. Alright, let's keep going. I got one from The Blaze. Biden makes several gaffes at G7. At one point, world leaders openly laughed at his forgetfulness. From Paul Saka. Do we have video? Let's see if we have video. We do have video. So we watched this one already. We'll see the other one. Let's set the scene, though. Oh, one's from Sky News. Where's Matt Mark? Oh, we got a lot of video. Holy crap. All right, let's go into this then. When on the world stage with his peers at the G7 summit this weekend, President Biden had several media mental lapses and gaffes. At one point, fellow world leaders openly laughed at Biden over his forgetfulness at the G7 conference at Cornwall, England. But don't worry, he is going to be tough on Vladimir Putin. During a press conference on Sunday, Biden stumbled while speaking about Russia ahead of his June 16th meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva. Let's listen.
Where we could work together with Russia. For example, in Libya, we should be opening up the passes to be able to go through and provide food assistance and vital assistance to a population that's in real trouble. I think I'm going to try very much hard to. It is. And by the way, there's places where. I shouldn't be starting off with negotiating in public here, but let me say it this way. Russia has engaged in activities which we believe are contrary to international norms, but they have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. And for example, the rebuilding of Syria, of Libya, they're there. And as long as they're there without the ability to bring about some order in the region, and you can't do that very well without providing for the basic economic needs of people. So I'm hopeful that we can find an accommodation where we can save the lives of people for example, in Libya,
There you go. Syria and Libya, 3 times. The cork fell out again. But we got some more video to watch. All right. Previously, First Lady Jill Biden proclaimed that her husband was so well prepared for the conference. He's been studying for weeks, working up for today. She said he knows most of the leaders that will be there. Joe loves foreign policy. This is his forte. Time magazine was ridiculed last week for an extremely flattering cover featuring an illustration of Biden appearing years younger and a headline that read, "Taking on Putin." Yeah, we just did that one. Biden already said he won't hold a joint press conference with Putin because he doesn't want to get diverted by who talked the most. Let's have a listen to this one, because he's apparently going to get in trouble with the staff if he doesn't call from a pre-approved list of reporters.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way. Jennifer Jacobs, Bloomberg.
When asked a question by the press, Biden responded in a strange whispering voice, 120 days, give me a break, I need time.
When you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans?
120 days. Give me a break. Need time.
When you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans to
120 days. Give me a break. Need time.
When you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans to
120 days. Give me a break.
That's kind of weird. Biden delivered a befuddling comment during the presser saying, COVID, I know you all know, but a lot of people may not know what COVID is. That is a system whereby it's going to provide funding for states to get access to the vaccines. Let's have a listen.
COVID is, I know you all know, but a lot of people may not know what COVID is. That is a system whereby they're going to provide funding for states to be able to get access to vaccines. COVID is, I know you all know, but
During the summit, there was a conference between the G7 leaders of the US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and Japan, along with other leaders from India, South Korea, and South Africa. Boris Johnson introduced the leaders, who were not G7 members. Welcome to those who have just joined us. We have some pretty spectacular weather. We have Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Moon in just a minute. A confused Biden interrupted Johnson to inform him that he didn't introduce Ramaphosa, despite Johnson introducing the president of South Africa literally seconds earlier. "And the president of South Africa," Biden said, who was sitting next to Johnson.
And just say how pleased I am to welcome those who have just joined us, bringing some pretty spectacular weather with them, Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Moon, in just a minute. And the President of South Africa. And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier. Oh, you did? I certainly did.
But you're going to mention twice. So.
I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted. I'm glad to say we're joined by Prime Minister Modi of India, who's on the line.
Let's go.
So there's that. There's another awkward moment. We watched that one during the G7 conference when Biden was walking through a section and asked a random and easy question, "How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?" Joe Biden quickly interrupted the impromptu question and frantically said, Jill said, "Joe, come on," and waved her hands for him to come with her, which elicited laughter from the people nearby. She then grabbed his hand and led him away. This is the person who has the nuclear codes. Just so you know. And just one thing I gotta remind Joker the Don over in the chat is that Joe Biden is the most popular president in history, and he got more votes than even Barack Obama. There was nothing bad that happened in the 2020 election. It was perfectly above board. It was the safest election in history. Anything else is a conspiracy theory, and Joe Biden is the president, most popular president, and he is absolutely 100%. Everything was above board and legal. Honk, honk, wink, wink. Honk, honk, honk. All right, let's keep going. From CNN, 3 takeaways from President Biden's first G7 summit. From Kevin Liptak. When President Biden and his aides were planning his visit to the Cornish coast this weekend, many, including the president, viewed it as something of a homecoming. Long a fixture at international summits, Biden's return to the table represented more than just an elder statesman finally taking his place among the club of world leaders. For the White House, it also signaled a return of the United States, the type of consensus-based diplomacy shunned by former President Trump. Like any high school homecoming, Biden found some familiar things: a stilted family photo, the quick diplomatic pull-asides German Chancellor Angela Merkel. But he also found some things have changed. Staunch American allies, shaken after the political upheaval of the Trump era, are increasingly working to define their own foreign policies separate from a country whose internal politics remain mired in dysfunction. Global earthquakes like Brexit and the coronavirus pandemic had not yet happened. The last time Biden attended a diplomatic summit as an elected leader, completely elected too, honk honk. And were major topics of discussion in Cornwall. And the dramatic escalation of cybercrime and digital surveillance provided a menacing subtext. including on Saturday when organizers decided to cut off internet to the meeting room as the leaders engaged in sensitive talks on China. The differences in body language between this weekend's summit in Cornwall and the 3 summits attended by Trump couldn't be starker if the 45th president was sometimes pictured looking sullen. As other leaders united against him, Biden seems to take pains to look relaxed and comfortable among world leaders even when differences arose. He heartily laughed sitting alongside PM Johnson, who seemed relieved Biden had apparently moved past his descriptions of the prime minister as a physical and emotional clone of Trump. Biden leaned in to an embrace from the French president, Emmanuel Macron, who just got bitch-slapped, with both men pressing into each other's sides as they walked arm in arm into the summit venue, forcing other leaders to walk around as their meetings the next day started. Biden was clutching a pair of his aviator sunglasses when he passed off to Macron a question on whether America was back. Yes, definitely, the French president said. He added later, "It is great to have U.S. president who is part of the club and very willing to cooperate." Biden and Merkel met outdoors, taking advantage of the coastal sunshine. For talks punctuated by laughter, that evening Biden joined the leaders for more forced bonding, this time in the form of a beach barbecue that featured ice cream sundaes for dessert. Oh, he's got his ice cream! Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff going on with that, but this is just a glowing thing coming back from the network that sucks the dick of the current president. Let's grab one from the BBC. China denounces G7 after statement on Xinjiang and Hong Kong. No author given because it's the BBC. In a joint statement at the end of a 3-day summit, leaders of the G7 countries urged China to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms. Issues highlighted included abuse against the Uyghur Muslims minority group and the crackdown on Hong Kong's pro-democracy activists. China's embassy in the UK accused the G7 of baseless accusations. Stop slandering China, stop interfering in China's internal affairs, and stop harming China's interests, a spokesman said on Monday. The statement by the G7, the world's 7 largest so-called advanced economies, included pledges on a number of issues such as ending the coronavirus pandemic and steps to tackle the climate change, as well as references to China. The group made up of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US called on China to respect human rights in Xinjiang, a northwestern region that is home to the Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities. Experts generally agree that China has detained many as 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslims, and imprisoned hundreds of thousands more in its crackdown on Xinjiang, which began in 2017. There have been widespread reports of physical and psychological torture inside the prisons and detention camps in the region. China denies the allegations. The G7 also called for rights and freedoms to be respected in Hong Kong, where a new security law passed by China last year has made it easier to punish protesters. The leader said Hong Kong should retain a high degree of autonomy as established under the agreement when it was handed back to China in 1997. The statement underscores the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, a heavily policed waterway that separates China and Taiwan. China sees democratic Taiwan as a breakaway province, but Taiwan sees itself as a sovereign state. It also demanded a new investigation into China into the origins of COVID-19. So yeah, I can see why China would be pissed, but all of these countries, Canada, the US, England, Germany, they're all going to roll over as soon as China says, okay, we're going to raise your prices now. They'll all roll over anyway, so I don't know what the point is of them coming out and denouncing like that, but apparently there was a point. And apparently something's going to happen, but I don't know what it is. And China's going to come out and get all pissy and cry and start World War III. And that's what I have to say. And, I mean, as far as Xinjiang and Hong Kong, plus Taiwan on top of it, I mean, yeah, if you're going to do human rights violations, expect the West to come out and denounce you, because then we don't have to look too closely at their human rights violations. Hong Kong, same thing. These people all like freedom and democracy. And if you're going to turn yourself away from them, expect these Western leaders to get pissed. The same thing with Taiwan, or as most people call it, proper China. But that's what we see coming back up out of this. Let's grab one from Reuters. We got just a couple more on the G7, then we can finally go talk about something else. But yeah, I knew this was going to be the bulk of the show today, so let's keep going. G7 agrees to end new government support for coal power by the end of 2021. The group of 7 nations on Sunday pledged to rapidly scale up technologies and policies that accelerate the transition away from unabated coal capacity, including ending new government support for coal power by the end of this year. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more about the campaign promises you're going to break, Joe Biden. The countries, in a communique following their summit in Britain, confirmed pledges to increase climate finance contributions as part of efforts to reduce emissions that contribute to the climate change and help move towards cleaner energy, although climate groups said firm cash promises and other details were missing. Coal power generation is the single biggest cause of greenhouse gas emissions, the 7 nations, the US, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, said, adding continued global investment in unabated coal power generation is incompatible with keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. We stress that the international investment in unabated coal must stop now as we commit now to an end to new direct government support for unabated international thermal coal power generation by the end of 2021, they said. I wonder how Pennsylvania feels about that. I don't care what they do over in Europe. I really don't. If they want to run their economies into the ground and get taken over by corporate China, then that's on them. But there was a promise in the campaign that we were not, for any reason, going to shut down coal in this country because that would almost guarantee Pennsylvania go for the other guy. And yet, here we are, talking about ending coal for Pennsylvania. Putting a lot of people out of work in the process. And I really think that we should get to more renewables. We should. But to do so in the direct, quick way to, especially when it's government subsidies, because government subsidies affect heat. How people heat their houses and run their electricity. We absolutely should be seeking alternative ways, but we're not there technologically yet. I've said this since the beginning of this channel. I love the idea of solar. I love the idea of wind. I love the idea of nuclear. But we're not there yet technologically. Let's move forward for that more. But not without freezing out constituents that turned around and honk honk voted for you. That's where I have the problem. U.S. President, Hong Kong, Joe Biden, speaking after the summit, noted a commitment of up to $2 billion to support developing countries as they transition away from unabated coal-fired power. Honk. The nations, in their statement, vowed to focus on other technologies, including carbon capture, to help speed up the transition away from coal. Yeah, carbon capture is a cool idea if you can actually get it and use it again rather than reburn it. Kind of like what they do with a diesel engine and a DPF. But you're not getting that fuel back, and you can't go back and reuse it for energy. That's just wasted by the end of it. Yes, it comes out cleaner, but it's still just wasted. But that's what they're going to do. Just end it. Just end their support for it, which includes government subsidies for heating in places that use coal for heating and electricity in the winter. And by the end of 2021, which is also in the midst of the winter too, because our new year flips over in the winter. This will be fun to watch. Honk. All right, from Euronews. Boris Johnson confirms G7 to donate 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses by the end of 2022. By Euronews with AFP and AP. The G7 nations have agreed to distribute globally more than 1 billion vaccines against the commie fucking coof between now and the end of 2022 in the hope of eradicating the pandemic, Boris Johnson announced on Sunday. Dude, it's over. You eradicated it. You won. It's done. Speaking at a news conference towards the end of the summit in Cornwall in southwest England, the British PM added that the leaders of the world's leading economies who formed the Group of Seven had committed themselves to make the move either by financing them or via the COVAX scheme for sharing vaccines. Earlier, both the International Monetary Fund and the World Health Organization warned the leaders of G7 nations that their strategy to help beat the coronavirus pandemic does not go far enough. Speaking on Saturday, WHO head Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus warned that 11 billion doses of the coronavirus vaccine were needed to vaccinate the world against the deadly virus, far short of the 1 billion pledged by the G7 leadership. There you go. Spend more money, rich countries, on us. To hell with your constituencies. Spend more money, you guys, on us, and forget about everything else that you have going on. Then on Sunday, Kristalina Georgieva, the managing director of the IMF, said that while the donations of excess vaccines to the developing world was a good first step, more work would be needed to help countries actually vaccinate their populations. Addressing climate change, Johnson said the G7 had agreed to end direct government support for unabated coal. We just read about that. And it's been one of the things, too, that we see sometimes going on with charity. Now, I love charity, and you guys know that, especially given the fact that my hair is down past my ears right now, because I'm growing it out for people who can't grow hair because they're getting chemo. I'm growing it for a cancer wig, is what I'm growing my hair for. I love to do charity. Hell, I sat in this particular chair right here for 24 hours with the old laptop screwing up as much as it did. I sat here for 24 hours and raised almost $2,000 for suicide prevention. I love charity. But there are chances, especially when we look at something like this, where you give to charity and the beneficiaries don't say thank you. They say, give us more, please. More. No, don't stop there. Just give us more. And that's one of the things I can't stand about it, is the fact that there are people out there. Now, anything that you get for free should be considered to be a gift, and you should be thankful for it. But to get a gift of 1 billion vaccines around the world, sometimes fully inoculating some of these countries, or having the ability to do so, and then they come back and just say, oh, well, you're not doing enough. Bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. But it's going to continue to happen. All right, let's grab one from the Daily Wire. DeSantis torches Biden for being passive on the world stage, leaving Middle America behind. And I believe we have video for this one. Yes, we do. So there's a partial transcript of it. Let's set up the stage here and let's go watch the video. Governor Ron DeSantis slammed President Biden on Sunday, immediately after Biden spoke at the G7 conference, saying that America's enemies were watching as Biden displayed passivity and low energy on the world stage. Let's have a listen.
Let me bring in Florida Governor Ron DeSantis now, get some reaction
Florida
to
man.
what we just heard. Governor, thanks very much for being here and standing by throughout our live coverage of the G7 closeout meeting. Your reaction to what you heard from the president.
Well, Maria, I think it's quite a contrast from his predecessor. I think that President Biden is someone that's much more passive on the world stage, not nearly as assertive as somebody like Donald Trump was. I think his energy level is obviously much lower. And so I think that's just something that people are sizing up. I think that our adversaries are watching that. I didn't hear very much in the way of holding China accountable for their role in covering up the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's absolutely essential that China be held accountable for their role in that, as well as any bureaucrats in the United States who may have been covering up. But, you know, they were talking economically a lot about other countries. He was talking about reducing energy production worldwide. And I couldn't help but think, you know, here in the United States, he's leaving a lot of people behind. Look at all the workers he left behind by canceling the Keystone XL pipeline. Those were thousands and thousands of very good jobs. And then also think about family budgets with the sharp increase in gas prices and then the overall budding inflation that we're seeing that's being fueled by his big spending policy. So I think that his performance probably played well with European elites. Not sure that there was much in it for middle America.
And, I mean, there's absolute truth to what he has to say. There never has been. One of the things that's bothered me about the fact, and part of the reason I left the Democrats, is there never has seemed to be support for middle America. Now, there's always been support for poor America, but it's never seemed to be trying to get them to middle America, and they don't have the working class in mind. They continue to ship jobs up overseas, and it didn't used to be that way. That's the weirdest part. It never used to be that way. There was always support for middle America on the Democrat platform, but just recently we've got to the point where it's not there anymore. So it's all about corporate interests and everybody else that can go back and help them. So good on DeSantis. All right, last one. And then no, I'm sorry, it's not the last one. I got one more. And then we'll go into something else from the Wall Street Journal. This is a couple days old, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. China tempers climate change efforts after economic officials limit scope. From Xiahua in Hong Kong and Keith Zai in Singapore. China's top economic planners have put the brakes on attempts by environmental officials to reduce carbon emissions as driving growth takes priority over meeting climate targets for now, according to people familiar with the matter. Officials at China's main economic planning agency, the National Development and Reform Commission, have limited the initial scope of National Carbon Trading System, which is set to go into full operation later this month after pilot projects in 8 Chinese cities. The Economic Planning Office has also gained the upper hand in negotiations over drafting a detailed roadmap to fulfill leader Xi Jinping's pledges to achieve peak carbon dioxide emission before 2030 and net zero emissions by 2060, the people said. The Environmental Ministry has risen in prominence over the last decade and had in recent months appeared to be newly empowered to exert more influence, but the recent developments show the economic agency, which sets China's energy and emissions targets, still has greater clout. So, yeah, they're not going to do the climate change thing because they're making way too much money off of the fact that they don't do the climate change thing. Imagine that. They get to make a whole bunch of money and they don't have to abide by the same rules that you do. Imagine that. Won't you, for just a second? No, that would never happen like that. All right, from Fox. Bush nonprofit agreed to take $5 million from Chinese Communist Party connected group report. From Tyler Olson. This is also a little bit old, but we're going to touch on this just briefly. And then we'll get into something else. The George H.W. Bush Foundation for U.S.-China Relations agreed to accept $5 million from a group with ties to the Chinese Communist Party and China's international propaganda efforts, according to a report Saturday. The group, which was founded by Neil Bush, a brother to former President W., and former Florida Governor Jeb, goes by the name Bush China Foundation for short. Its goal, according to its website, is to build a constructive relationship between the U.S. and China, so that we can continue to ship our jobs over there. But a written agreement published by Axios reveals that the Bush China Foundation agreed in 2019 to accept over $5 million over 5 years from the China-United States Exchange Foundation, an organization that's been criticized as a key part of China's international propaganda efforts. We're proud of our partnership with the CUSEF and deeply appreciate the CUSEF's generous support. Leslie Reagan, a spokesperson for the Bush China Foundation, said, according to Axios, the Bush China Foundation has staked out a very strong independent posture on virtually all the major issues in the U.S.-China relationship. The process, we have frequently leveled sharp criticism of the Chinese policies and actions when we believe that has been merited. So yes, even W and his corrupted family is getting a whole bunch of money to go send more jobs over to China. All right, that's all that I have on the G7. Now let's go through the rest of this. Got some video, we got some other stuff to talk about, and we've got the rules of acquisition. Plus, I'll be over on Steven's channel later on too, so I don't know how we're going to make this, but let's get through it. All right, Let's start with my senator, Ron Johnson. ACYN says Ron Johnson says that President Biden is a liberal, progressive, socialist, Marxist. Let's listen.
Why is he granting these waivers to countries that are not particularly friendly? They're hostile towards us, and meanwhile taking away American jobs simultaneously.
Because he's weak. And don't ask me to get inside the mind of a liberal, progressive, socialist, Marxist like President Biden. But what I do know is this is self-inflicted wound.
Why is he?
He's not either, and Ron Johnson is completely wrong on this. He's just a boring ass, war-loving fucking neocon. He's not a liberal, progressive, socialist, Marxist. He's just being told what to do by liberal, progressive, socialist, Marxist. He is an empty suit. And Kamala herself is going to be an empty suit too when she comes into the presidency. An empty suit. All they're going to do is what the cabal behind them says. You've got the hardest on crime candidates in history as the presidential, vice presidential team, so-called Hong Kong, that totally won fairly, Hong Kong, standing behind a BLM agenda. And that doesn't raise red flags to you? 1994 tough on crime bill? None of that raises red flags? And none of you Marxists out there saw this? No, they are not themselves the Marxists, but they are the people who, they're basically being the puppets for the Marxists. So, no, he's wrong on that. And thank God that he says that in solidarity with term limits, he's supposedly not running this term, but I don't trust that either because he drank the Beltway water and now he wants to sit in there forever like everybody else. But thankfully, hopefully, he'll be gone after this term. Let's talk Charlie Kirk, which I was not able to find an article to go with, but let's just have a listen to this. Charlie Kirk thinks that weed delivery is like slavery. No, Charlie Kirk, putting people in cages for delivering weed is slavery. This is from the LP of Texas. And we'll go over this in just a second. But of course, I mean, this is... nobody would ever clip something out of context to make a political point or a political agenda. Let's listen.
And here's why. Because we live in an abundant society. We live in a place where you could have literally weed delivered to your front door. It's like, what? And somehow, oh, that's liberty. No, that's actually slavery. And here's why. Because we live in an abundant society. We live in a place where you could have literally weed delivered to your front door. It's like, what? And somehow, oh, that's liberty. No, that's actually slavery. And here's why. Because we live in an abundant society.
So that was obviously taken out of context. And I mean, for Kirk in his super duper neoconservative Charlie Kirk mind is trying to make the connection between being addicted and having the addiction to slavery, which that I can understand when you go back and you look into, some of these harder drugs like heroin, for example, where you actually physically get sick if you don't have your fix. Or methamphetamines is another one that go with that, where you get ill and you have to have it forever. You are a slave to the dealer at that point, and you will do whatever it takes to get that next fix, that next hit. But he's coming out here just to say that weed is like slavery. No, it's not. But LP of Texas would also be good to not take something back out of context to come off and say that. Not that what Kirk said was right, but it was wrong in a different way than what LP is trying to come back and say because we hate the neocons. And I said this, I tweeted this out, I think last night. I don't know, my days are running together. But I tweeted this out at some point that it's the same thing with all these narratives that are being shattered about Trump right now. You didn't have to make stuff up to go after Trump. He had enough dirt on him, and he still has enough dirt on him. You don't have to go and make stuff up like a photo op, or the bungling of the coronavirus, or the Russia this, or the Russia that. You don't have to make this stuff up. Just ask him about the fact that he used to be a Democrat. But the hardest part is the fact that anything that is actually true you would go after him for, you have to implicate all your little Democrat fucking buddies to go with. Which is part of the reason they have to make it. It's the same thing with this. Charlie Kirk hates liberty. He loves big government. He loves it as long as the big government he likes is in charge, and you can go after him on that. He's said plenty of stuff to go talk about the fact of how much he loves big government and he hates liberty and freedom. So you don't have to take a little clip out of context to go try to go after him. He's hung himself numerous times over and over. This is just lazy. All right, let's grab one from CNBC. DOJ watchdog will probe reported Trump-era subpoenas of Apple for Democrats' data. From Kevin Breininger. The DOJ's Internal Watchdog Office will investigate after a bombshell report alleged that the Trump admin had secretly subpoenaed Apple for House Democrats' data, the office said on Friday. The probe will review the use of subpoenas and other legal authorities to obtain communications records belonging to members of Congress, their associates, and the news media in connection with recent investigations of alleged unauthorized disclosures of information to the media by government officials, Inspector General Michael Horowitz announced in a statement. The move follows a growing chorus of Democrat lawmakers, including the two whose records were reportedly subpoenaed, demanding that the Justice Department's Inspector General launch a probe into the Trump-era conduct. The New York Times, a former newspaper, reported Thursday evening that the Trump's Justice Department in 2017 and early 2018 seized records from at least a dozen people linked to the House Intelligence Panel, including Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff and committee member Eric Swalwell. The agency reportedly also obtained data from the accounts of aides and family members, one of whom was a child. Prosecutors in the DOJ, then helmed by AG Jeff Sessions, were searching for the sources of damaging news reports about contacts between Trump associates and Russia, the report said. As Trump's persecutors probed the source of the leaks, they reportedly looked into the House Intelligence Committee, whose members have access to sensitive documents. The investigation did not link the House committee to the leaks, but Sessions' replacement, Bill Barr, kept the investigation going, the Times reported. Apple was kept silent by a gag order that expired last year, according to a spokesperson for the company, who confirmed the subpoena in a statement to CNBC on Friday evening. It would have been virtually impossible for Apple to understand the intent of the desired information without digging through users' accounts, Apple spokesperson Fred Sainz said. Consistent with the request, Apple limited the information it provided to account subscriber information and did not provide any content such as emails or pictures. Microsoft on Friday similarly confirmed a 2017 subpoena and gag order relating to the personal email account, which would all be fine except for the fact that the Obama admin did the same thing, and so did W. I mean, that's where the Patriot Act came from, and I suspect that even though it was in its infancy, I'm pretty sure the Clinton administration did the same thing. This is not a new thing. And hey, here's a thought. Adam Schiff, first and foremost, Adam Schiff did the same thing to Devin Nunes at the beginning of this, so just keep that in mind. Keep also in mind that there is intelligence right now that proves that Mr. Swalwell was in contact with a Chinese spy. So is there investigation that goes along with that? And the worst part of this, and the part that pisses me off the most about this, is if you are so concerned about people going through your phone records and going through your emails and having the subpoena for all this stuff out here and all this and that and the next thing and the fucking Patriot Act, because you are doing that to us on a daily basis. Every time I pick up my phone, somebody's listening in. Now they can't use it because of Fourth Amendment. Let me rephrase it. They can't officially use it because of my Fourth Amendment. But it's there. It's being bulk collected. So if you're concerned about it, consider that the next time the Patriot Act comes around to be re-signed. Because I've got a feeling that Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell they're in no hurry to go and end that. I don't care. The government can investigate itself into the fucking ground for all I care about. They'll ignore what is convenient for them, and they will prosecute the rest. From CNN. This is just a video. Never mind. Haha, just kidding. From Fox News, Trump Justice Department seized records of House Democrats as it searched for leakers. Report. From Fox News. Apparently they didn't feel the need to put an author up either. The DOJ, under former President Trump, subpoenaed data from Apple belonging to a pair of House Democrats and at least a dozen people with ties to them as it looked into leaks for classified information, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported on Thursday. The records pulled included those of Adam Schiff, who was the ranking Democrat in the House Intelligence Committee at the time, the Times reported, citing committee officials and 2 other people briefed on the inquiry. At least 1 other Democrat in the House Intelligence Committee and at least 12 individuals with ties to the committee had their records pulled in 2017 and 2018, sources told the outlet. While the records did not link any members of the committee to the leaks, 3 sources told the Times that AG Barr directed the Schiff-related investigations to continue. The Justice Department was also said to have obtained a gag order from preventing Apple from alerting lawmakers. Those orders recently expired. So, yeah, basically the only reason that we're figuring this out is because gag orders expired. But I do have to wonder if if this went the other direction and there was a gag order for the Obama and, just conveniently, we don't want to say this because we were just giving over data from people who are critical to our great and glorious Messiah, Barack Obama. So, there's that. I don't give a fuck. It's important. We need to discuss it because there were problems there, but for the most part, I don't care. Investigate each other into the ground. Have the 2 political parties investigate each other until all the leaks are out there and the mainstream media covers what happens to the Republicans and don't give a fuck about what happens to Democrats. Fuck it. From CBS News, federal judge halts loan forgiveness program for farmers of color. A federal judge has halted a loan forgiveness program for farmers of color in response to a lawsuit alleging the program discriminates against white farmers. U.S. District Judge William Griesbach in Milwaukee issued a temporary restraining order Thursday, suspending the program for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported. The program pays up to 120% or direct or guaranteed farm loan balances for Black, American Indian, Hispanic, Asian American, or Pacific Islander farmers. President Biden's administration created the loan forgiveness program as part of its $1.9 trillion COVID-19 pandemic relief plan. And it is not equal protection under the law. This is a big deal for us, John Boyd Jr., president of the National Black Farmers Association, told CBS Money Watch in March when the federal spending package was approved. We see this as a great opportunity to help thousands. The conservative Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty filed a suit in April arguing white farmers aren't eligible for the program, amounting to a violation of their constitutional rights. The firm sued on behalf of 12 farmers from Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, Missouri, Iowa, Arkansas, Oregon, and Kentucky. Were plaintiffs eligible for the loan forgiveness benefit, they would have the opportunity to make additional investments in their property, expand their farms, purchase equipment and supplies, and otherwise support their families and local communities. The lawsuit said because plaintiffs are ineligible to even apply for the program solely due to their race, they have been denied equal protection of the law and therefore suffered harm. There you go. You can't do reverse racism and expect to get the fuck away with it. I'm sorry, you can't do that. Not from the federal government. Now, if there was a private charity set up to come back and pay the loans off of black farmers, then the court wouldn't be able to say dick about it. They would try. And the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and I know the people there, they would try. They would try to make a lawsuit out of that. But the federal judge, the same federal judge probably, who came back and said that, okay, we have to halt this program because it doesn't do equal protection under the law, would look at the WILL and tell them to get fucked because it's a private charity and they can do whatever they want with their money. But because it's the government, equal protection under the law applies. And I told you back in January that this was going to happen. All right, let's keep going. Pam Keith tweets out, after hours of quote tweeting CNN says, after hours of debate and public comment, the Florida State Board of Education unanimously approved the amendment banning critical race theory. To which, on the 11th, Pam Keith tweeted back out, "Take a sec to contemplate the depths of white supremacy that would lead to banning the teaching of what really happened to black people in this country. I'm not sure y'all appreciate how terrifying it is to black people to see the hatred of our white neighbors on such display." And really, honestly, why do you want to teach? Why do you want to teach young black kids that they'll never be good enough to do anything? Why do you want to teach them that there's so much boot on them? Yes, we have the cousin fuckers down in Alabama who still think that the South is going to rise again. We have those people out there. But for the most part, we just looked at this loan program. Black people in this country have every opportunity to make it in this country, and in fact, more. And some of it is government sanctioned until the courts come in and say, you can't do that because there's no equal protection under the law when you do. So, yeah, why would you tell kids that they're never going to make it in their lives? Why even try? Because you're never going to make it without a government handout. Why would you tell black kids that? That seems more racist than anything else. All right, let's grab one from CNN. Pelosi is backpedaling again. Pelosi says House leadership did not rebuke Omar over comments about U.S., Israel, Hamas, and the Taliban. From Veronica Strakwalersi. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Sunday said House leadership did not rebuke Democratic Rep. Ilhan Omar last week after criticism from the left that the caucus was unfairly targeting Omar and mischaracterizing her comments about the U.S., Israel, Hamas, and the Taliban. No, they weren't mischaracterizing her. She knew what she said, and she intended to say it. We did not rebuke her. We acknowledged that she made a clarification, Pelosi told CNN's Dana Bash on State of the Union. Congresswoman Omar is a valued member of our caucus. She has heard questions on Secretary of State. Nobody criticized those. About how people will be held accountable if they're not going to the International Court of Justice. That was a very legitimate question, and that was not of concern. The dust-up within the party began Monday when Omar, a Minnesota Democrat, tweeted that we have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban, along with video of her questioning Secretary of State Antony Blinken that day during a House hearing. The disagreement spilled onto public Wednesday when a group of Jewish House Democrats accused her of equating the U.S. and Israel with the Taliban and Hamas. She did. But now Pelosi is caught in a rock and a hard place because now she's got to go back and backtrack this, because if she goes after an Islamic person, there's going to be hell to pay. But that's happening back up there. Let's grab another one from Fox. Another bit of fun news for this. From Fox News, AOC's aunt says blame Puerto Rico polls, not Trump, for Abuela misery. Report. From Dom Colicchio. If the grandmother of U.S. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has suffered in Puerto Rico since Hurricane Maria in 2017, then Puerto Rican politicians are to blame, not former President Trump. That's the assessment of an aunt of the New York Democrat who was interviewed in Puerto Rico by Britain's Daily Mail. Ocasio-Cortez made headlines earlier this month after posting photos from the Puerto Rican home of her 81-year-old grandmother, or Abuela, Clotilde Rivera, and claimed that the residence remained in disrepair nearly 4 years after the hurricane, in part because Trump blocked relief money for Puerto Rico. But when a Daily Mail reporter visited Rivera's home this week, the woman there, who claimed to be AOC's aunt, said the Congresswoman's story wasn't accurate. The aunt noted that Category 5 hurricane caused extensive damage to the island, but insisted Trump wasn't to blame for the residents struggling to receive aid. It's a problem here in Puerto Rico with the administration and distribution of the help, the aunt told the Daily Mail. It is not a problem with Washington. We had the assistance and it didn't get to the people. After Ocasio-Cortez's June 2nd post on Twitter, the conservative commentator Matt Walsh fired back at the Congresswoman, saying it was shameful that you live in luxury while allowing your own grandmother to suffer in these squalid conditions. And Walsh, as we know, later raised more than $100,000 for Ocasio-Cortez's grandmother until the campaign was ended, but the Congresswoman's family declined to accept the assistance. Yeah, I threw money into that. I did. That was amazing. And it is Puerto Rico, because we know that they can't give Trump the win. They can't. They won't do it. All right. Let's grab one from the Texas News Today. Father of Michael Brown Jr. joins anti-BLM leadership movement. This is not Green Check verified, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. Because usually I only use Green Check verified sources, but this one is not. But still something worth looking into. And we've already seen some of this happen, so we've talked about this before. Michael Brown's father has joined an anti-BLM leadership movement as more chapters demand accountability after the property empire of Patrisse Cullors was exposed. The original 10 chapters of Black Lives Matter are demanding accountability and transparency from the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, the nonprofit that provides them with funding, and have joined forces as BLM 10+. Michael Brown Sr. is perhaps the most notable name to join the BLM 10+ movement, Fox News reported. Michael Brown, 18, was killed by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. His death and the violence between the police and protesters in the aftermath has been largely credited for the early spread of BLM. Michael Brown Sr. is perhaps the most notable name to join the BLM 10+ movement. People wearing some of the chapters have made their own statements, echoing not only our call to accountability, but also our experiences as we sought transparency, democracy, and internal transformation for years, the statement continued. The BLM 10+ continues the call for transparency and, most importantly, for principled accountability in the movement infrastructures. Yeah, it was a cash grab, and people put big money into BLM. And the only person that really seemed to get rich was Patrisse Cullors. Everybody else are still waiting on their money. So yeah, absolutely. They should be focused on this. They should be paying attention to this. I would. But there it is. When one person gets rich off of this and everybody else is still living out in squalor, it's a grift. All right. Elaine put this photo out the other day, and I thought it was fun to see. Bill Clinton and James Patterson, the president's daughter. To which she tweets with this, but why? So we read from UPI. Bill Clinton, James Patterson discuss collaborating on a new mystery thriller book from Annie Martin. President Bill Clinton and James Patterson say mutual admiration was the key to their collaboration on a new mystery thriller book. The former president and the author, both 74, discussed working on the new mystery thriller novel, The President's Daughter, during Thursday's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Clinton and Patterson released a first mystery thriller book together, The President is Missing, in 2018, and released The President's Daughter this week. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, Clinton and Patterson said they first connected through their agent, Bob Barnett. We have the same lawyer agent, and the president reads everything. He also reads a lot of mysteries. Patterson said, my agent, ours, Bob Barnett, is a wonderful guy. You know, you've written all these nonfiction books. You're out of politics and you need to have fun. Why don't you write a mystery thriller? You've read thousands and thousands of them, and I have. It's Clinton voice. Why am I not reading this in Clinton voice? I've been an ardent reader of those books probably since the early 80s. So why don't you do one with James Patterson? Clinton added. Clinton and Patterson said they will work together when writing and defer to each other's knowledge and expertise. If there's a disagreement, and there really hasn't been, look, the whole key is mutual admiration in terms of our skill set, and we listen. If there was a disagreement, we'd go with the president, Patterson said. If it was about how the president or former president would say something, or what they would do, and I knew the facts, that what the facts were, then he would defer to me, Clinton added. But if it was about how the best to say something that drives the plot and heightens the drama, I would defer to him, because I've been like a schoolboy these last two books. I love it. And sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. In an interview with The Guardian published on Friday, Clinton said he's always wanted to be a writer, but doubted his ability to do so. He named thriller books as his comfort read. I find comfort in thrillers with interesting characters and good stories, Clinton said. So there you go. James Patterson and Bill Clinton are working together on a book. All right, from Newsweek. Some video game news. Five Nights at Freddy's Scott Cawthorn won't apologize for supporting Trump. From James Crump. An animator who created the critically acclaimed horror survival video game Five Nights at Freddy's in 2014 has refused to apologize for his donations to conservative politicians, including former President Donald Trump. Scott Cawthorn, 43, from Houston, trended on Twitter after people searched for an animator on Public Political Contributions website, Open Secrets, and discovered he had donated to Trump and Senate Minority Leader and veteran Republican, the Turtle Man. The records also revealed that Cawthorn donated to Tulsi Gabbard, who drew criticism in 2020 for pushing a bill that would ban transgender girls from competing in women's sports. Cawthorn's name in Five Nights at Freddy's trended on Twitter following the revelation, with some fans of the animator expressing their disappointment with his political leanings. Although he stayed publicly silent on the controversy for a number of days, Cawthorn posted to Five Nights at Freddy's Reddit on Saturday in a statement titled, My Response and Maybe Last Post, where he confirmed that he has donated to Trump and claimed that people had threatened to come to his house after his address was posted online. To say that the last few days have been surreal and would be an understatement. I've debated greatly how to address this, including not addressing it at all, but with so many people from the LGBT community in the fan base that I love. That's not an option, Cawthorn began in the statement. Why do you dig? That's what I don't understand. It was the same thing with Chick-fil-A. Do you realize that if liberal progressive groups hadn't gone digging for Chick-fil-A's stance on gay marriage, not the company stance, the CEO stance, if they had not gone digging for that, we wouldn't know, and people far and wide would be loving the Lord's chicken right now. Although I'm sure they went looking because of the fact that they weren't open on Sundays. So they must be hyper-religious, so let's go find what they feel about gay marriage. It's the same thing. And I've told you guys numerous times, I choose not to shop at companies where I know their politics. If they came out on the soapbox themselves, if somebody else went digging for it, I'll still go patronize them. But like Walmart and their 223 ban, because it's assault weapon ammo. Good, you don't need my money anymore. Target, we will take 95% of our product from black-owned businesses. Good, you don't need my money anymore. You got on the soapbox for it. Burger King, in all their insane stupidity, well, we're going to charge you extra for these chicken fries because they come in a pink box. Good, you don't need my fucking money anymore. It's over. Whereas companies like, well, this guy here, first off, if nobody had gone digging for it, we wouldn't have known. He would have just been another video game artist where we probably would have sat back and said, oh, he's probably some fucking liberal anyway. But somebody went digging. They went to go find his name on Open Secrets. They went searching for somebody else to crucify for supporting the former president. Or Chick-fil-A. When somebody realized they weren't open on Sundays, somebody went to go digging to figure out where they stood on gay marriage. I'll still patronize them because they didn't come out in the open. Somebody else flashed it out there for them. If somebody went out digging for Kohl's and found out that Kohl's is super religious and super Republican, if somebody went out there and went digging for it, I would still shop there. But if they came out on the soapbox and said, we solemnly support Mitch McConnell in his re-election bid for the Senate, I would say, fuck you. Get out of here. I don't want to deal with you. It's the digging that drives me nuts. It's not the fact that it's out there. It's the fact that people have to dig for it. Because they want to smear somebody for one reason or another. All right. From the New York Post. High school students marked with Sharpie based on vaccine status for prom. From Gabrielle von Rogue. New Hampshire high school students were marked with Sharpies based on their vaccination status for their senior prom, outraging some parents and a local lawmaker who said the move was akin to a scarlet letter. Exeter High School, about 30 miles east of Manchester, hosted its senior prom during the first weekend of June and marked any student who didn't have a vaccination card with a black Sharpie, while those who had gotten the jab were given a red mark, NBC Boston reported. If they were on the dance floor, they had to raise their hands after 3 songs so their numbers could be recorded by the underclass students for contact tracing purposes. There's even more to the story, but this alone is surprising to us, a concerned constituent told Representative Melissa Litchfield, according to a June 8th Facebook post. One constituent likened the marking to a scarlet letter and asked Litchfield to go to the school board about it. The elected official, who's been an outspoken voice when it comes to vaccine privacy, wrote on Facebook, "We're slowly robbing our children of freedoms that we have taken for granted for so long. And if this is a public school, that's the government getting involved in it too, keep in mind. So that's another strike against them. If the vaccination is effective, at this point, anyone within the state can have access to it. Those vulnerable or not, why does it matter if the rest of the population is vaccinated? Aren't those who have been vaccinated have the vaccine protected?" Litchfield questioned on the post. Yes, they are, but you still have to have the panic because then you can go and guilt everybody else into go getting it. And furthermore, I mean, the scarlet letter, that's a good way to put it. It's trying to make a second class of citizens. The people who aren't vaccinated are not going... I almost have to be concerned that this is a chance to go with racism in reverse, to try and this is how it was under Jim Crow, and you were a second-class citizen. You weren't allowed to go to this place or that place. Yeah, well, why the fuck would you bring it back if that's the problem? So, yes, we continue to see this kind of thing. And, I mean, you don't have to mark somebody who's vaccinated. They'll come out and tell you. They'll get up in your face. Hey, did you know I'm vaccinated? Hey, did you know that? Hey. Hey, I'm vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. Did you know that? Huh? That's what they'll do. So you don't have to mark them. All right. I've actually got some good news here. I know, I've been angry for most of this episode, but I've got some good news here. From WTHR.com, Carmel police are asking for help locating a missing 17-year-old girl. Emmy Motzko was last seen Friday night on Carmel's west side and could be headed to Indianapolis, which is kind of lame because, missing teen is a bad thing, especially in this fucked up world where sex trafficking is going all over the place and they're always looking for new victims. Well, here's the good news. She has been found, according to Fox 59 out of Indianapolis. Carmel missing teen found safe. From Allison Edmonds. Update 8:20 p.m. Carmel police say Emmy was found safe. The Carmel Police Department was asking for public assistance in locating a missing teen who was last seen just before 6 p.m. Friday evening. Emerson Emmy Motzko is described as a 17-year-old female, 5'4", 110, with brown hair. She was last seen in the area of West 126th and Town Road, wearing a light green men's hoodie XL, gray beanie, and light gray sweatpants. No real information as to what happened with the fact that she was found, but she was found. And I did retweet this, and I checked into this last night because I wanted to make sure that if she was still out there, that any of you guys across the country were out looking for somebody like this, because we want to make sure that all these kids get to go home safe, but Emmy did get to go home safe. Good. From Ron Helton's favorite politicians publication. Ron, make sure that you give a clap for your favorite politician over there. From Bloomberg. Teen suicide attempts surged during lockdown. CDC study shows. From Alexandre Tanzi. ER visits for suspected suicide attempts by teenagers, especially girls, rose sharply during the pandemic lockdowns, according to new data from the CDC, which we told you about a year ago. I sat in this chair for 24 hours to raise awareness and money for the cause. Because we told you about this a year ago. The CDC found that suspected suicide attempts in the age 12 to 17 group declined in the early days of social distancing, but then rose among both girls and boys in the summer of 2020. In the subsequent winter, suspected attempts by female teens surged to 51% higher than the equivalent period in 2019, while among males the rate fell back. The data illustrates one aspect of the pandemic's toll on mental health, as physical distancing measures and stay-at-home orders disrupted daily life across the U.S. and may take years for the full impact to emerge. The CDC's findings suggest more severe distress among young females than has been identified in previous reports. Young persons might represent a group at high risk because they might have been particularly affected by mitigation measures such as physical distancing, including a lack of connectedness to schools, teachers, and peers, the authors wrote. They also cited obstacles to mental health treatment during the lockdown, increases in substance abuse, and anxiety about family health and economic problems, all of which are a risk factor for suicide. Yes, isolation sucks. And yes, I can sit in this little tiny studio for days and days on end without going anywhere. I've done it before. But humans are social creatures. I mean, look at how much I've been on the Discord voice chat lately. I do it almost every day just to go back and talk and see who's hanging out, who wants to go discuss things, and who wants to have the conversation. I do it constantly because we are social creatures. It's what we do. And yes, having the isolation. I have been isolated, and it took a toll on me. It was largely self-inflicted, but it came from being in the tail end of an abusive relationship, and I didn't want to be seen. I felt like I was a burden to everybody, and then I just sat isolated completely and watched my own mind cave in on itself. I know how hard this is for people. And now I've got you guys to talk to every day, but still, I know how hard this can be for people to just sit and be isolated forever. It's horrifying. And now to have the government saying that you can do it, and you can't even go to work or school in some cases. Yeah, I can see where this was a problem. And I said this a year ago, that this was going to start becoming a problem. And sure enough, hey, we're looking back at this now and we're seeing this is a problem. Oh my God. All right, so we see that, and I told you this was going to happen. All right, last one. A little bit more on the Bill Maher saga, then we will do a rule of acquisition and how to head out of here. Tim Pool retweeting out from MRC TV. Bill Maher, Tim Pool says, Bill Maher isn't right-wing. You're just so far left you think he is. MRC TV tweets out, I see YMI, which I don't know what that acronym means. I'm not fucking paying for that. Bill Maher tears down the left-wing idea of giving free college to everyone instead of solving real problems in education. Let's have a listen.
President Biden's American Families Plan asks the taxpayers to pony up hundreds of billions so that everyone can go to college, and billions more for subsidized childcare so our kids can go to school while we go to school. But Biden's plan is an endorsement of a particular idea, that the more time humans spend in classrooms staring at blackboards, the better. I know free college is a left-wing thing, but is it really liberal for someone who doesn't go to college and makes less money to pay for people who do go and make more? And in the immortal words of her daughter, Olivia Jade, I don't know how much school I'm going to attend, but I do want the experience of, like, game days and partying. Yeah, I'm not paying for that. You know, I've heard this from so many nurses and teachers and administrators rolling their eyes when relating how they needed to take some course in order to advance in their field, when really they already learned what they need by working the job. And because it's so necessary, colleges can charge whatever they want. Since 1985, the average cost of college has risen 500%. What other business? It doubles every 9 years. Every year it increases at 4 times the rate of inflation. The answer isn't to make college free. The answer is to make it more unnecessary, which it is for most jobs. So that the 2/3 of Americans who either can't afford to or just don't want to go don't feel shut out. Because the system we have sets up this winner-loser dynamic and breeds resentment that working hard has less value than sitting around in this thing. And that in turn feeds into our widening political division.
I mean, why am I agreeing with Bill Maher again? Oh, yeah, because he's actually right on something. And, you know, and I go with my college experience. Now, I dropped out of regular college and I went to trade school. Because of the, as he pointed out, the bullshit classes that you have to take to advance. I mean, if, really honestly, unless you're going into something specialized, you shouldn't need to go to college anyway. And really honestly, I shouldn't have even gone to mechanic school. I should have just learned what I needed to on the floor. Would have saved me $40,000 fucking dollars. But regardless, in most cases, and I mean, even if you go to an actual technical college, like if I, because, okay, let's go through my journey. First, I went to a UW school. I'm not going to say which one. Those of you who know enough about me can probably figure out which one I went to. But I did go to a University of Wisconsin school. I went to one of those briefly until I realized what the bullshit courses that they were going to make me take for engineering. I mean, why do I need to take Black History Studies if I'm going to go into engineering? If I'm going to, and that's what I was doing. I was doing engineering. And the whole thing was a complete waste from the start. And then I saw that the job market was starting to tank, and I said, you know what? Everyone's going to need a mechanic. I'm going to go to the local technical college, which I'm also not going to say the name of, but you could probably figure it out if you know me. I went to there for a semester, realized that I had to take economics and another sociology and this and that and the next thing in order to go and learn how to take a cylinder head off a Hemi V8, which I already knew how to do. But to have the piece of paper to say, I'm certified. I went to school for this. And I did wind up going into a specialized trade school that didn't have any gen eds to it. And that should be the way that we should be doing it. I mean, if you do have to go to school for something, it should be on something that's specialized where you don't have any gen eds, because that's what's drawing this out of here. That's what's making things expensive, and B, making a generation of people who get out of school and don't know a goddamn thing on how to do the work, but know what the history of black people inventing peanut butter is. You see where we're seeing with this? And then, like Lori Loughlin's daughter said, well, I just want to go for, I want to have the 4 years of, and honestly, when I went out east, that was what my ex-girlfriend said too, at the time. The girl I was dating when I went out there. She wanted to go and make sure that she had the college experience. Going out drinking and partying and this and that and the next thing. This is my first time away from home. I want to have the college experience. Great. Well, have fun. All right. And that is it. That's all that I have for the day for the news. But the end of the Monday show, we go talk about one of the rules of acquisition. So I've got the list up here. Where were we? What was the last one we did? Sedition and treason are always profitable was the last one we did. So we will go today with the 5th rule of acquisition. Always exaggerate your estimates. Now, in show, of course, this wasn't done in show. This was from a novel. But still, you look into this, and you look at the way that the Ferengi did business. They were always out to get the most profit that they could possibly get out of any specific transaction. They were out to cheat people. So Of course, if you're going to go out and do a job or contract somebody else to do a job, you're going to want to, put a little bit back in your pocket because that would be the profit. You want profit for some of this. So you want to be the intermediary in whatever you can possibly find to do. Now, I always wondered who actually did the manual labor for the Ferengi because they don't seem like the manual labor types. I mean, Rom was an engineer, but for the most part, you're not seeing a lot of building, you're not seeing a lot of construction, you're not seeing a lot of anything else. And I always wondered who did that, but even still, you sit back and, wow, I've got maybe $100 or 100 bars of latinum worth of materials and maybe 50 man hours of labor here. So I think that I'm going to charge 2,000 bars of gold pressed latinum for this particular job. Now, with this, we can actually come out and bring this into our world and how we actually put ourselves out there, because you should always exaggerate your estimates. You should always pad what it is that you're going out there, because it's not just about trying to put an extra little bit of profit in your pocket, but if you are going to go out and do some work for somebody, if you're going to sell something to somebody, or if you are going to work for somebody else, under promise and over deliver is one of the things that we always need to pay attention to, and one of the ways we should always be conducting ourselves. So yes, over exaggerate your estimates. And I've done that too for some stuff too. I've come out and promised that something may take longer to get delivered somewhere. Something may be more expensive than it actually will wind up being once we get through everything. Because when it comes out and it's delivered quicker, or when it comes out and costs less, I look like a hero. So it's not always about putting things into your pocket. It's about forging customer relationships. Because if you tell your customer that it's going to take a week to get, and then some fluke happens and it takes a day, you're a hero. But if you tell your customer it could take a day and then some traffic hits somewhere and it winds up taking a week, you're the asshole. So really, honestly, this is something that's important that we can even do without being criminal Ferengi and just looking for the profit motive. It's about forging great customer relations. It's about making sure that your customer is taken care of. And it is about giving the best product you can possibly give. So yes, always exaggerate your estimates. Absolutely. You always should. I would show clips for this stuff, but Paramount is not really happy when you, and CBS either, when you play their footage. They tend to shut that shit down. All right, but we're done. We're done. We're out of here. Yes, we did talk about the journalist. That was at the, I think that was the second story, because I think it did the Austin shooting first, and then we did that one. But yeah, we covered that one at the top of the show. Let's get out of here. Let's throw some music up. Let's change up the scene, and let's go over and we'll also bomb my friend Stephen Ignoramus as well. By the way, if you are on Twitch, stick around on Twitch, because we are going to go raid the Daily Ignoramus, which I am actually going to be on in just a bit here. So thank you, everybody who came by and hung out with us over in the live chat, kept us honest, kept us going here. And if you are just lurking, make sure you get those last-minute messages in so I can write it all down in the notebook and give everybody a little bit of thanks at the end. So definitely looking forward to that. Come and join me over on the Daily Ignoramus here, coming up in, I gotta look and see what time that's actually going to be. He sent me the message. Oh, he's already got the meeting out. 11:30 to 1 Eastern. Oh, he wants me on there for a while. So about an hour and 20 minutes I'm going to be on over there. So definitely go back and hang out with that. So we'll go over there and raid that, and we'll see you in another 80 minutes or so. Otherwise, we'll be back here later on tonight for more of the Red and Ed Show. We've got a bunch of great stuff to go over. Definitely looking forward to seeing you guys over there. Hoping you guys will come and hang out. Otherwise, come back bright and early tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.